You can take my money, mister. Nathan Cole turned slowly, the blood still draining from his face as the card reader blinked. Declined in glaring red again. Are you serious right now? A man 2 people back muttered. Guy's wearing a watch that probably costs more than my truck. But he can't pay for cereal. A woman behind him chuckled with a sharp shake of her head. Must be one of those influencers pretending to be broke for views. Pathetic. Another teenager laughed and whispered just loud enough, "Dude looks like a Wall Street vampire." What, no Wi-Fi for your crypto wallet today? The laughter wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. It was the kind that stings because it assumes everything about you. With no curiosity for the truth, Nathan remained still, staring at the register screen like it might change its mind. I said, the little girl repeated louder this time. You can take my money. Gasps, snorts, a few chuckles. Oh Lord, someone said. Now a kid's got a cover for Mr. Armani here. Nathan turned, finally getting a full look at the child. She was no taller than his hip. Her hair was braided in 2 thick plaits, and her shoes were scuffed from playground use. She held out the bag of money, small change, ragged bills, like it was treasure. And maybe to her it was. I can't take that, he said softly, shaken more by the crowd than the moment. That's yours. You should keep it now, Grace. But you need it right now, she replied. And my mom says if someone's standing alone, you stand next to them. That's what good people do. Silence settled over the crowd, but only for a beat. Kids got more class than him. An old man snorted. Nathan forced a smile, eyes suddenly glassy. The cashier, a young woman with faded tattoos on her forearm, shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure what to do next. Do you want me to cancel the order, sir? She asked. Nathan exhaled, shoulders sinking slightly. His pride ached. He should walk away, mumble an apology, maybe even flash his ID and reclaim his power. But something about the girl's gesture held him in place like an invisible anchor. What's your name? He asked gently. Grace, she said with a bright, fearless smile. Well, Grace, Nathan replied, crouching down slightly. That's the kindest thing anyone's done for me in a very long time. From behind them, a teenager chuckled. Bet this guy's got 5 Lamborghinis and not 1 working debit card. Grace turned, frowning. You shouldn't laugh at people when they're down. That's not brave. A few chuckles died away. From across the store, a voice called out. Grace, baby, where'd you run off to? A woman in worn blue scrubs hurried over, eyes widening at the scene. I hope she's not causing any trouble, sir. No trouble at all, Nathan said. In fact, she just saved me from a whole lot of shame. The woman gave him a long, curious glance, then looked down at her daughter. What did you do, sweetie? I gave him my emergency money, Grace said matter-of-factly. His card didn't work and no one helped him, so I did. The mother blinked, then looked at Nathan again. Well, that sounds like Grace. She gave a slow nod. You okay, sir? I am now. They began to walk away, but Nathan found himself stepping forward. Wait, they paused. Would it be all right if I thanked you both properly, maybe buy you lunch? The mother looked wary, but not dismissive. We don't usually. No pressure, Nathan interrupted. I haven't been helped like that in a long time. Not without someone wanting something back. There was a long pause. Then the woman said, There's a place down the street, Rosie's Diner. Good food, real cheap. Nathan nodded. I'll meet you there. As they walked away, the weight of the moment settled on his shoulders. Not just the embarrassment, but the clarity. The silence in the grocery store was different now. Less mockery, more confusion. Nathan glanced once more at the card reader and declined. But something else had been accepted. Something that had nothing to do with banks or credit scores. Outside, the Georgia sun beat down on the parking lot. Nathan blinked up into the blue sky, then climbed into his dusty Chevy truck. He didn't drive off right away. He sat there thinking about Grace, about the people who had laughed, and about a voice young, fierce, and unwavering cutting through the noise. "You can take my money, mister." And in that sentence, he heard something else. "You still matter even if they don't know who you are." The smell of fried chicken and canned green beans greeted Nathan Cole as he stepped through the screen door of a second-story apartment on Rosewood Lane. The stairs creaked under his shoes, and the hallway's paint had peeled in corners, exposing the age of the building, but there was something undeniably warm about the space. Grace had skipped up the steps ahead of him, her ponytail bouncing as she waved him on. "Come on, it's not fancy, but it's home." Her mother Evelyn walked behind him, a hand resting on the strap of her purse, visibly hesitant but willing. "You sure you're okay with this, Mr. Nathan?" "Just Nathan," he said, offering a small smile. "And yes, I appreciate the invitation." Evelyn gave a slow nod. "Well, just for a bit. I've got work at the hospital tonight." The apartment was small but tidy. A faded sofa, mismatched cushions, a round dining table with only 3 chairs. On the wall, a hand-drawn calendar with Grace's school schedule and Evelyn's night shift scribbled in purple marker. Nathan felt himself being drawn back decades to cramped apartments, warm kitchens, and mothers trying to make ends meet. It had been a long time since he'd been in a home that felt this real. "Sit," Grace ordered, pointing to the couch. "Do you like root beer? That's all we have," Nathan chuckled. "Love it." She darted into the kitchen. Evelyn watched her daughter go, then turned back to Nathan. "You're not from around here?" "No, ma'am. I grew up about 2 towns over. Been a while since I was back." "You just visiting?" He hesitated. "Something like that." Evelyn studied him for a moment, then moved toward the kitchen herself. "Grace is a lot like her father was. Always wanted to help everybody, even when we didn't have much." "Is he gone 5 years now?" "Car accident on the way home from the ER. He was a nurse." She pulled 2 glasses from the cupboard, paused, then added, "I'm used to doing things on my own." Nathan nodded, not out of politeness, but because he understood, more than she probably knew. Grace returned, arms barely holding the 2 glasses. "Tata," she beamed, setting one on the coffee table in front of Nathan. He took a sip. The root beer was warm and flat, but he smiled like it was a 5-star drink. "Best I've had all day." Grace sat beside him, eyes wide with curiosity. "You really don't have money?" Nathan laughed, nearly choking. "I have money. I just didn't have the right card today." She nodded seriously, like this made perfect sense. "It happens to Mom sometimes, too. The bank gets confused." Evelyn returned from the kitchen, drying her hands. "Grace, go grab your homework. You've got spelling tonight." "Do I have to?" Evelyn raised an eyebrow. That was enough. With a groan, Grace trudged off to her room, mumbling something about words that don't sound like how they're spelled. Nathan looked after her, then turned back to Evelyn. "You've raised a good kid." "Thank you. She's a handful sometimes, but she's got a good heart. I just worry the world won't always be kind to it." Nathan leaned back, considering her words. "Yeah, the world tends to get meaner when it sees someone kind." Evelyn eyed him again, more openly this time. "So what's your story, Nathan? You don't look like a guy who loses sleep over a declined card, designer boots, polished watch voice like you've done speeches." He smiled faintly. Used to work in tech, built a few things, sold a few more. Got tired of hearing my own name in headlines, so I disappeared for a bit, trying to remember who I was before all of it. You running from something?" she asked without judgment. "Not running," he said, his voice quieter, just trying to breathe without being someone. They sat in silence for a few seconds. Then Evelyn said, "Well, you found the right town for that. Silverbrook doesn't care who you used to be. It cares who you are when someone needs help moving a couch or fixing a roof." Nathan chuckled. "Sounds like a fair trade." Evelyn checked her watch. "I've got to leave soon. Night shift at St. Mary's." "Can I drive you?" "You don't have to do that." "I want to." She looked like she wanted to argue, but then softened. "All right, thank you." They stood, and as Evelyn grabbed her coat, Grace emerged from her room holding a sheet of paper. "Mom, can Nathan help me with spelling?" Evelyn looked at Nathan amused. He knelt down. "I'll give it a shot." Grace grinned. "Spell serendipity." Nathan blinked. "You sure this is second grade?" She giggled. "I like big words." "All right," he said. "serendipity." She looked at the paper, then at him. "Whoa, you're good." Evelyn laughed from the doorway. "You two play nice. I'll be back by morning." As Nathan watched her leave, he felt something shift. It wasn't dramatic, no grand epiphany. No music swelling in the background, just a subtle crack in the concrete wall he'd built around himself. He turned back to Grace, who was now setting up her homework at the table. "Do you want to stay for dinner tomorrow?" she asked without looking up. "We're having spaghetti, Nathan hesitated, the familiar reflex to retreat rising, but he swallowed it. "I'd like that," and he meant it. By sunrise the next morning, the video had spread faster than wildfire. Nathan Cole, former tech magnate and media-dubbed ghost billionaire, was now the face of one of the internet's newest comedy trends, the rich guy who couldn't pay for groceries. He hadn't even known the clip existed until he'd opened his phone over cold eggs and black coffee at the diner across from the auto repair shop. The waitress had raised her brow when she saw him seated alone in the corner booth, whispering something to the cook behind the pass. Then came the lingering glances from two teenage boys scrolling on their phones a few tables down. "Yo, isn't that the guy?" one of them said, not even trying to whisper. Nathan didn't flinch. He already knew what they were seeing, a grainy video taken by some bored customer at the Silverbrook grocery. His frozen expression, the declined message flashing the way he looked around, and then humiliatingly how a little girl handed him a bag of money like he was a stray dog in need of feeding. The caption read, "When your billions don't work at checkout." Hashtag Billionaire Blues. Another version edited the footage into a clip of Monopoly money raining down with circus music in the background. He'd been famous before, not adored, not even admired, just visible. But this was ridicule in its purest form. Stripped of his last thread of anonymity, mocked for daring to walk into a store as a man instead of a brand. Nathan closed the browser, paid the check in cash, and left a generous tip. As he stepped outside, the Georgia heat was already clinging to the pavement, thick and humid. He shoved his hands into his pockets, feeling
She
a
stood
bitter
across
pulse
the
of
street
shame
in a powder
start to
blue
crawl up
backpack,
again,
waving as
until
she
he heard
trotted
a small
toward him
voice call
with an
out,
oversized book
"Hey,
swinging
Nathan,
in her
Grace!"
arm.
Evelyn followed at a slower pace, her expression unreadable. "You left your sunglasses yesterday," Grace said, holding them out. Nathan took them gently. "Thanks, Grace. You saved my eyesight." "I saw your face on my mom's phone this morning," she added brightly. "You're famous now." Evelyn winced slightly, but said nothing. Nathan knelt beside her. Sometimes being famous just means more people laugh when you fall. Grace wrinkled her nose. That's dumb. You didn't fall. You just had a money hiccup. Nathan chuckled. You make it sound less tragic. It wasn't tragic. It was just real. There it was again. That strange steadiness in her, like she hadn't yet been taught to be embarrassed by honesty. Or maybe she had, and decided not to care. People are going to keep talking, Evelyn said finally. Even around here, small town like this, folks don't forget when something goes viral. I figured, Nathan said. This isn't the first time I've been the punchline. But now you're the punchline in their backyard, Evelyn added. It's different when they think they own the story. They began walking down the street toward Grace's school, passing the corner gas station, where an old man paused, filling his tank to give Nathan a long, amused stare. Hey, card working today? He called out with a grin. Nathan gave a polite nod. Hope so. You might want to check your GoFundMe, the man said, chuckling. I hear the internet's got jokes. Nathan kept walking. Grace skipped ahead, humming to herself, seemingly unaware of the heat surrounding her unlikely friend. Evelyn glanced sideways. You sure you're up for this Silverbrooks kind, but it's also nosy. I've been humiliated in front of millions of people before, Nathan replied. But somehow this feels worse because it's personal now. He nodded. Because it's face to face. They stopped in front of the school gate. Children flooded the playground. Grace turned and gave Nathan a fierce hug around the waist. Don't let the laughing people make you sit. I'll try, he said, his throat tighter than he expected. Evelyn gave a half smile. Come by for spaghetti tonight if you're still brave. I'll bring garlic bread, Nathan said, as she disappeared into the school building. Nathan turned and headed back toward his truck. He didn't start it right away. He just sat there watching the town wake up. In the distance, he saw two younger men pointing at him from a hardware store parking lot. One of them mimed swiping a credit card and laughed. Nathan's hands clenched on the steering wheel. He could leave. Just get back on the highway, disappear again. There were hundreds of small towns like this, and none of them would care what happened in Silverbrook. But something about Grace's voice, her courage, made him stay. Instead of driving off, he headed to the local hardware store. He needed some tools, literal ones, and maybe something else. Inside, the cashier looked up with wide eyes. Didn't expect you here, he said. You need cash, right? Nathan met his gaze. I need a shovel, 2 bags of mulch, and some paint. I'm fixing the playground behind the community center. The man raised an eyebrow. Out of the kindness of your heart, no. Nathan replied. Because a little girl gave me $10 and reminded me what being human looks like. The man didn't speak again as he rang him up. By late afternoon, Nathan was knee-deep in weeds behind the long-forgotten community center. Sweat dripped from his hairline. His shirt clung to him like regret, but with every patch of dead grass pulled up, every loose board tightened, he felt something shift, something steady, quiet. The laughter still echoed in corners of his mind, but now there was Grace's voice layered on top of it. You didn't fall. You just had a money hiccup. Maybe dignity wasn't about how people saw you. Maybe it was about what you did next when they stopped looking. The knock at the door came just after sunset. Evelyn, still in her scrubs, was elbow-deep in soapy water cleaning dishes from the night's spaghetti dinner. Grace was sprawled on the living room rug, coloring with 3 broken crayons and a sheet of printer paper. Can you get that baby? Evelyn called out, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Grace opened the door and grinned. Nathan. He stood on the threshold holding a large brown paper bag that was sagging slightly at the bottom. I brought dessert, he said, lifting the bag. Peach cobbler and something that claimed to be banana pudding, though I wouldn't stake my name on it. Evelyn appeared from the kitchen, visibly tired, but with a soft smile on her face. You didn't have to do that, I wanted to, Nathan replied. Besides, I owed you both a meal not cooked in a microwave. They sat down together at the table, the plate still warm from dinner. Nathan scooped out generous helpings while Grace bounced in her seat. Mom, tell them about the old lady with the pineapple hair, she blurted. Evelyn rolled her eyes with a chuckle. Patient at the hospital today. She put canned pineapple in her rollers to cleanse the scalp. Said it keeps her connected to the Caribbean. Nathan laughed. I might have to try that next time I'm in need of enlightenment. Grace giggled, mouthful of cobbler. You don't have enough hair. As they ate, the mood felt unusually light, familiar. Nathan couldn't remember the last time a room felt this safe without security at the door or assistants checking their watches. Later, as Grace got ready for bed, Evelyn stepped out onto the small balcony, with Nathan both holding paper cups of lukewarm tea. You know, I still don't really know who you are, she said, gazing out at the quiet street below. I told you, Nathan, he smirked. You know what I mean. He hesitated. I used to think my name was everything, that if people said it enough times, I mattered more. Evelyn glanced at him, and now I'm wondering if maybe the only thing that matters is what you do when no one's saying your name at all. A silence settled between them. Not awkward, but full. Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. I left this on your kitchen counter, he said. It's not much. Just a little something for Grace's school stuff, books, lunches, whatever she needs. Evelyn didn't take it right away. I don't want your guilt money, Nathan. It's not guilt, he said softly. It's gratitude. She studied him for a long moment before finally accepting it. You don't need to fix anything. You just need to be honest. He nodded. Inside, Grace was humming to herself as she placed her crayons into a worn shoebox. Mom, can I give Nathan something? Evelyn peered in. What do you want to give him, baby? Grace reached into her backpack and pulled out a tiny object wrapped in tissue. She held it out to Nathan. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small hand-painted stone. It was purple with little stars and crooked letters that spelled, Be the helper, I made it in art class, Grace said shyly. You can keep it in your pocket so you remember to help even when you're sad. Nathan swallowed hard. I'll carry it everywhere. That night after they said goodbye, Nathan walked back to his truck parked down the block. He sat in the driver's seat and unwrapped the stone again, holding it in his palm. Something about it made his chest ache. He thought of all the years he'd spent acquiring things, real estate stock accolades, and how none of them had ever made him feel this seen. Back at the motel, he placed the stone on the nightstand. It looked oddly holy there, resting beside his watch and key fob. Early the next morning, he drove to the Silverbrook Community Center again. He brought lumber this time, and paint in bright colors, sky blue, sunflower yellow, and the kind of red that reminded him of childhood fire trucks. By noon, he had patched up the swing set, sanded down the broken seesaw, and scrubbed years of grime from the monkey bars. He worked with his shirt soaked through a baseball cap low on his brow, humming songs he didn't remember knowing. People walked by, some with recognition, others with wary glances. A few muttered, "Ain't that the guy from that video?" But no one stopped to talk. And then a boy around 10 came near the fence. "Are you fixing that place?" "I am," Nathan replied. The boy nodded. "That's cool. My sister broke her tooth on that slide last year. Then I better reinforce the bolts." The boy smiled. "My name's Eli. Nice to meet you, Eli. As the boy walked away, Nathan realized he hadn't once mentioned his own name. Later that afternoon, he taped a note to the door of the community center. If you've got tools or time, lend it. If you've got nothing but heart, bring that too. No signature. He watched the paper flutter in the breeze and for once felt okay being anonymous. Back at Evelyn's that evening, Grace ran to meet him before he reached the stairs. You smell like outside, she said, nose wrinkled in mock horror. That's because I rebuilt half a playground, Nathan said. Come see tomorrow, really? Only if your mom lets you skip homework. Evelyn appeared at the doorway, arms crossed. Not a chance. Nathan smiled. Worth a shot. As the sun dipped low and cast gold across the brick buildings, he sat on the stoop beside Grace, the tiny purple stone tucked safely in his pocket. He didn't say much, but he didn't need to. Sometimes being seen isn't about flashing lights or headlines. Sometimes it's a crayon-colored stone and a dinner table with mismatched chairs. The bell above the door of Harper's Cafe chimed softly as Nathan stepped inside. The scent of roasted beans and old paper drifting through the air like a memory. It was the kind of place that had aged with its town mismatched chairs, a long oak counter, handwritten signs for pastries, and a wall of community notices tacked over a faded quilt. A ceiling fan rotated lazily above, more for show than utility. He ordered a plain black coffee, turned down the pastry offer, and chose a corner seat with a view of the street. He liked sitting by windows now. Liked watching people pass without knowing who he was or what he'd done. It grounded him, made the world feel a little quieter. But peace has a way of running short when your face has been seen by 10 million strangers. Excuse me, a voice said. Are you Nathan Cole? Nathan looked up slowly. The woman standing before him wore a dark green blazer, a notebook tucked under her arm. Her eyes were sharp, not unkind, but trained like someone who made a living observing what others missed. He gave her a measured look. Depends on who's asking. Clara Reyes. I'm a journalist, independent, mostly human stories. I'm working on a piece about you. There's nothing to write, Nathan replied, taking a slow sip from his cup. Oh, I think there is, Clara said, pulling out the chair across from him without waiting for an invitation. The billionaire who vanished, then reappears in a Georgia town where he gets publicly humiliated at checkout and then starts fixing playgrounds with his own hands. That's not just news. That's narrative. I didn't authorize a narrative. You can't really control stories once they leave your hands, she said. You of all people should know that. Nathan studied her, then glanced toward the counter. Dolly, the elderly owner of Harper's Cafe, was pretending to wipe the same mug she'd been wiping for 10 minutes, clearly eavesdropping. I'm not interested in publicity, Nathan said flatly. And I don't need a redemption arc written by someone who doesn't know me. Clara leaned forward. I'm not trying to save your image. I'm trying to understand your truth. Why now? Why disappear for 3 years? Then come back without the empire, without the suits, without the money. At least not where it counts. Nathan set down his cup and his voice calm but still lined. I came here to find something I lost. That's all. And I didn't ask anyone to film me or mock me or write about me. True, she said. But when you walked into that grocery store in tailored boots and an expired debit card, you walked into a mirror. People saw themselves broken trying to look fine, and they laughed because it was easier than crying. That stung. He didn't show it. I met a little girl named Grace, Clara continued. She told her teacher you're her friend, that you're fixing her park. Nathan's eyes narrowed slightly. You spoke to her, I'm thorough, she said, then softened. She said you carry a purple rock in your pocket. Says it helps you remember to be good. He didn't respond. Clara sat back, her tone less aggressive. Now let me tell the story your way. No angles, no headlines, just the truth. Nathan stared down at his coffee. The silence stretched long enough that Clara stood gently pushing a business card across the table. If you change your mind, call me. I'm here all week. She left without another word. Nathan stared at the card. Her handwriting on the back read, "The ones who fall quietly are the ones we need to hear most." Outside, the sky had dimmed. He left a few bills on the table, nodded goodbye to Dolly, and stepped out into the street. He didn't go home. Instead, he drove to the edge of town, to the cemetery on the hill. He'd passed it before, but never stopped. Tonight, he did. The gravel crunched beneath his boots as he walked rows of headstones reading names he didn't know. There was a small plot of children's graves, angels and teddy bears carved into marble. He paused, then sat on a bench beneath an old elm tree. For the first time in years, Nathan let his mind drift back to the boardrooms, to the press junkets, to the day when the markets turned and his name was dragged through fire. Back to the partner who betrayed him, the investors who turned their backs, the headlines that didn't ask for facts. The silence after the crash, thick total. And then to Grace, to her hand outstretched, to the purple stone. A noise behind him broke the stillness. Eli, the boy from the playground, stood near the path holding a flashlight. "My grandma's buried here," he said. "She used to sit on that bench too." Nathan nodded. "It's a good bench." "You okay?" The boy looked at him, raw honesty in his eyes. "Yeah, just thinking. My grandma used to say thinking too much makes you sad if you're not careful." Nathan smiled. "She sounds wise." She was. She made jam that tasted like hugs. They sat quietly for a few moments. Then Eli asked, "Why are people mean online? Because it's easier to throw stones when no one knows your name," Nathan answered. The boy nodded solemnly. "But you're fixing stuff. That's cool." "Trying to." "You should talk to the school," Eli added. "Our lunch lady quit last week and now the food's gross." Nathan chuckled. "I'll see what I can do." They left together, walking slowly back to the road, flashlights cutting across the grass. Nathan's mind was still full, but not heavy. The next morning he called Clara Reyes, not to give her the whole story, just to invite her to the playground's relaunch. "If you want to understand the truth," he told her, "you'll have to get your hands dirty too." The morning of the playground relaunch began with the smell of cinnamon rolls and wet earth. Nathan arrived earlier than anyone else. The sky was still blushing pale orange, and the morning mist clung low to the grass like a secret not ready to be told. He unloaded the last few items from the bed of his truck, a folding table, a stack of juice boxes, 2 coolers packed with sandwiches, and a small portable speaker playing Sam Cooke. It wasn't much, but he'd learned something in Silverbrook: people didn't come for glitz. They came for effort. He ran his hand across the new bench they'd installed by the swing set. Smooth, solid, honest, like something you could sit with your back to and not worry what was behind you. By 8:15, the first families began trickling in. Moms in denim skirts, dads in ball caps, kids in neon shoes. Grace was first to the monkey bars, climbing like a squirrel, her laugh carrying across the yard. Evelyn followed behind her, slowly, thermos in hand, her expression tired but warm. Nathan waved. Evelyn gave him a nod, the kind that said, "You did good." The small crowd grew quickly. Word had spread faster than expected. Not just parents and kids, but older couples, teens from the high school, even the cashier from Silverbrook Grocery, who gave Nathan an awkward smile before handing him a banana bread loaf. At 9:00, Clara Reyes arrived. Not in heels or city shoes, but sneakers, jeans, and a ponytail. She was already scribbling in a notebook as she walked. "You really did it," she said. Nathan handed her a sandwich. "I said I'd get my hands dirty." She pointed toward the tree line. "You've got someone else watching, too." Nathan followed her gaze. Standing at the edge of the park, just beyond the new fence, was a man in a dark suit out of place among the small-town attire. He wore sunglasses and had the poise of someone used to control. Nathan's gut tightened. "Who is he?" Clara asked. "Someone from the past," Nathan muttered. The man didn't approach, just watched. Then after a few minutes, he turned and left without a word. Nathan forced the thought away. He had more important things to focus on. Grace was waving him over, pointing excitedly at a new slide freshly painted in fire engine red. "Mr. Nathan, come test it." "I'm not sure I meet the weight limit," he said. "Come on, it's your slide now." Laughter broke out around them. Even Evelyn cracked a grin. Nathan relented, climbed the ladder, and slid down with a whoop that surprised even himself. When he landed, the applause, half joking, half genuine, caught him off guard. "Looks like it's safe," someone shouted. By mid-morning, kids were playing tag under the trees. Grandparents were sipping lemonade, and the new mural painted by local teens with Nathan's supplies shimmered in bold colors on the side of the community building. It read, "Be the helper," with a small purple stone drawn beneath the words. Nathan stared at it for a long time, unsure who had painted it. "You've started something," Clara said beside him. "Whether you meant to or not." "I didn't start it," Nathan replied. "Grace did." Clara flipped her notebook shut. "You think you're the background in this story," he said. "I think I'm just now learning how to be in it." Suddenly, a scuffle near the gate pulled their attention. A teenage boy, maybe 16, lanky, anxious, was arguing with another, voices raised, fists balled. "Hey," Nathan called, jogging over. The taller boy, clearly worked up, shouted, "He tagged me hard on purpose." "I did not," the other said, eyes glassy. "You pushed me first." Nathan stepped between them. "That's enough, both of you." The boys huffed, angry but embarrassed. "What's your name?" he asked the angry one. "Jason." Nathan pointed at the mural. "You see that stone?" Jason glanced up. "She gave me the real one. Because I needed help and no one else would. Now I carry it. So I don't forget that being strong isn't about hitting first. It's about knowing when to stop." Jason looked away, ashamed. "You two shake hands," Nathan said, "and then grab a juice box and cool off." Reluctantly, they did. Clara scribbled something quickly. "What are you writing now?" Nathan asked. "Truth," she said simply. Later that afternoon, the crowd began to thin. The juice was gone, the sandwiches devoured, and the kids sticky from popsicles. Someone's aunt had brought in a cooler. Grace hugged Nathan around the waist again. "Best park ever," she whispered. Evelyn approached with a tired smile. "You okay?" she asked him. He nodded. "Better than I've been in years." She tilted her head. "You sure that man in the suit didn't spook you?" "I'm sure," he said. "The past doesn't get to own me anymore." That night, after the cleanup, Nathan sat alone on the new bench. The mural gleamed in the moonlight. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the stone, and turned it in his fingers. He thought of Jason, of Grace, of the man at the fence, and of himself, once too afraid to be seen unless he was being celebrated. He looked up at the stars. They didn't care who he used to be, only what he chose to be next. The man in the suit returned 3 days later. It was just past noon when Nathan stepped out of Harper's Cafe with his usual black coffee. Greeted by the same creaky bell and scent of ground beans, Silverbrook's summer air hung thick with heat, and Nathan planned to head straight to the community center to meet a carpenter volunteering to help repair the old gazebo. He never made it to his truck. "Mr. Cole." The voice was low, clipped, practiced. The same man from the playground stood beside a polished black car parked across the street. Arms folded, sunglasses now off. His hair was slicked back, suit, crisp tie, loosened just enough to feign casual, but the gleam in his eyes said business, not familiarity. Nathan froze. "Victor Hale." The man smiled faintly. "Glad you remember me." Nathan didn't smile back. "Hard to forget the guy who handed me my last exit papers." Victor extended a business card. Nathan didn't take it. "I'm not here to rehash the past," Victor said. "I'm here with an opportunity." "I've had enough of those," Nathan replied, stepping to the side. Victor followed. "You disappeared. No press, no explanation. Just walked away from a company you built. Left your shares on the table. Everyone thought you lost your mind." "I gained peace. You could have cleared your name," Victor continued. "You still can." "I don't need the world's apology," Nathan said. "I just needed to stop pretending it mattered." "But it does matter," Victor snapped, the mask slipping. "You're trending again, Nathan. The grocery store, the kid, the playground. People are watching. You could use this. Turn it into something. A rebrand, a comeback." Nathan turned slowly to face him. "I'm not a product, Victor. Not a brand. Not your golden goose." Victor lowered his voice. "You're wasting yourself here. Fixing swings, sharing lemonade with school kids. You were a leader. You changed industries. I also crushed people under deadlines and ignored my mother's last voicemail because I was closing a deal. That landed hard." Victor's jaw tightened. Nathan added, "This town doesn't want another tech king. They want someone who listens when the roof leaks. Someone who shows up when the lights go out." Victor looked around the sleepy street like it personally offended him. "You think this is your redemption story?" he scoffed. "This place is a dead end." "No," Nathan said calmly. "It's a new beginning." There was a beat of silence. Then Victor shoved the card into Nathan's pocket anyway and walked away muttering, "The door's open. You won't like it when it closes." Nathan stood still, the coffee in his hand now lukewarm. He stared across the street toward the mural near the community center. "Be the helper." The words glowed in afternoon sun, like they had been waiting to remind him. Later that evening at Evelyn's apartment, he sat at the dinner table while Grace showed off a picture she'd drawn, a stick figure of him planting flowers, complete with a speech bubble that said, "Let's build hope." "You've turned into a cartoon," Evelyn teased. "Could have been worse," Nathan said. "She could have drawn me as a goat again." Grace giggled. "Goats are funny." As they ate, Nathan glanced toward the window. The world outside looked small and close and safe, and yet his mind buzzed with the weight of Victor's words. Evelyn noticed. "You're quiet tonight." "Just thinking," Nathan said. She set her fork down. "You going to tell me what's really on your mind, or are we going to play this mystery millionaire game forever?" He sighed. "A man I used to work with showed up today. He wants me to come back clean, my name, reclaim everything I walked away from." Evelyn didn't react immediately. She wiped her mouth, then asked, "Do you want that?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I thought I left for good reasons, but now it feels like the past is trying to pull me back. And maybe I haven't changed as much as I think." "You have," she said simply. "How do you know?" "Because the Nathan who showed up broke and embarrassed in a grocery store didn't run. He stayed. And the one sitting here eating spaghetti with a single mom and her loudmouth kid. He's not the man in those headlines." Nathan swallowed. And if I leave, what if I go back to that life? Evelyn shrugged. Then that's your call. But know this, Grace sees you as more than a man who lost a credit card. She sees you as someone who showed up when no one else did. That doesn't disappear just because you sign a new contract. Grace chimed in, mouthful. You can't fix stuff if you're always flying in jets. Nathan chuckled. Is that in the Bible? It's in my brain, she said proudly. That night after dishes were done and Grace was tucked in, Nathan stood at the window, staring out into the dark street. He pulled Victor's business card from his pocket and held it over the flame of a candle Evelyn had left burning on the counter. The edges curled slowly. Then suddenly, the whole thing caught fire. Nathan dropped it into the sink and watched it burn down to ash. He didn't need another empire. He needed purpose. And he'd found it here in Silverbrook in playgrounds and Purple Rocks in second chances not televised, but loved. By the end of the week, Silverbrook was buzzing again, though not with laughter this time. Something was shifting, an invisible hum beneath the quiet streets and coffee shop chatter. Nathan felt it before he heard it. The way people paused mid-conversation when he walked by. The way Dolly's smile faltered slightly when she handed him his cup. Even Evelyn seemed more guarded, as though expecting a storm. It started with a headline, not one that screamed across tabloids, but something quieter, more insidious. A tech industry blog known for rumor more than fact published a short piece titled, "The Billionaire in Hiding. What's Nathan Cole really up to in small-town Georgia?" It was filled with speculation, anonymous sources. Hints that Nathan's playground efforts were a cover for something else, something shady. That maybe he hadn't walked away from the tech world cleanly, that maybe the humble comeback was just a PR stunt in disguise. By Monday, the local paper had picked it up, then a talk radio segment, then a YouTube channel run by a guy in a basement wearing sunglasses indoors. It didn't take long for people to start looking at Nathan differently. The playground mural was defaced Tuesday night. Someone spray-painted over "Be the Helper" with a crude $sign and the words "Fake Savior." When Nathan saw it the next morning, he stood still for a long time, the sun rising behind him. Clara Reyes arrived moments later, breathless. "I heard," she said. "I came as soon as I saw the photo online." Nathan didn't say anything. He just stared at the red paint bleeding down the wall like a wound. "I know it wasn't you," she said gently. "Anyone who's been here the last few weeks knows that." "But not everyone has been here," Nathan replied quietly. "And the ones watching online, they believe what entertains them, not what's true." Evelyn joined them, arms crossed, face hard. "Cowards! Couldn't even say it to your face. People get scared when their illusions are threatened," Clara said. "Especially the illusion that rich men can't change." Grace ran up a moment later, stopping short when she saw the mural. Her face dropped. "Who did that?" Nathan knelt down beside her. "Someone who's confused." Grace frowned. "But you're a helper, no?" He smiled faintly. "That doesn't mean everyone sees it that way." "Well, I do," she said fiercely, "and so do my friends." She turned on her heel and marched off toward the school building, head high. That afternoon, Nathan borrowed supplies from the community center, paintbrushes, ladders, and stood in front of the mural ready to fix what had been broken. But he didn't paint over it himself. Instead, he invited others. Dots showed up. Teens with art kits, parents with toddlers, retired veterans with weathered hands. Even Eli, the boy from the playground, brought a small tray of watercolors. Together, they repainted the mural. Not just restored it, but expanded it. Around the original words, they added bright flowers, stars, small handprints in every color. They painted a bridge over the purple stone and little stick figures holding hands beneath it. Above it all, they added new text in bold white letters. Truth always outlives the noise. Nathan stood back, hands splattered with paint, heart heavier than usual. Clara approached quietly. You should talk to the town. Say something official. Clear the air. I've spent most of my life saying the right things, Nathan said. But maybe what I do here is louder. She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. I'll write that down. That evening, as dusk settled, Nathan sat on the porch at Evelyn's apartment, drinking iced tea and watching fireflies spark over the lawn. Evelyn came out joining him. Town's standing behind you, she said. You know that, right? I know some are, but others are still watching, waiting for me to crack. She sipped her tea. Let them. We all crack eventually, but that's not the same as breaking. He looked at her, something soft in his expression. You believe in me, I believe in what I've seen, Nathan. Not what I've read. Not what's whispered. He nodded. That's rare these days. They sat in silence a while, the kind that comes when words are spent and understanding settles in their place. Later that night, Nathan walked to the park alone. The mural gleamed under the moonlight, untouched, now protected by invisible walls of community care. He sat on the bench, pulled the purple stone from his pocket, and held it in his hand. Something was coming. He could feel it. The defacement wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a storm. One he couldn't see clearly yet. But he wasn't the man who ran anymore. He was the one who stayed, who showed up, who helped, even when helping meant standing alone in the noise. The sun rose early over Silverbrook, painting its old courthouse and sprawling, pine-topped hills in dusty gold. Nathan stepped out of his truck and inhaled the crisp mountain air, a reminder that this town was more than a backdrop. It was alive in the quiet hum of daily routines, the creak of front porches, the familiar scent of pine and fresh biscuits wafting throughout. He'd spent the night in restless thought, decisions turning over in his mind like gears in a machine. The defacement of the mural had stung. But more than that, it revealed something deeper: fear, suspicion, resistance to change. He knew Silverbrook was small, just over 4,000 residents, a mountain community with deep roots in moonshine lore, NASCAR heritage, and a sense of self-reliance. It didn't grow by leaps. It simmered quietly until one day it spilled over. As he walked toward the community center, he passed familiar faces. Mrs. Stover tending to her rose bushes, Mr. Jenkins loading bags of feed into his truck, the Lions Club banner flapping softly near City Hall. They nodded politely, curiosity and concern mingled in their eyes. This was the same town that had nicknamed itself the Moonshine Capital, where outsiders were met cautiously and change with gentle suspicion. Inside the center, volunteers gathered, the lilies on the benches fresh from the farmer's market. Local produce displayed with modest pride. Nathan greeted them, offering coffee, warm smiles, wordless gratitude. The chatter turned soft when people mentioned the mural, the whispers of what had been said online. At 9:00 a.m., Mayor Bennett, sworn in just months before, entered the hall flanked by town council members and elders. For a brief moment, Nathan feared he'd be told to keep doing his good deeds quietly out of sight. But instead, the mayor raised a hand. This community needs to speak its own truth, he said, voice steady. We stand behind those who build, not tear down. A quiet nod of applause rippled through the room. Nathan's heart fluttered. Not because of praise, but because this moment wasn't about him. It was about the town defending what it believed in: unity, kindness, the slow justice of shared action. Clara slipped in beside him too. She'd listened earlier, pen paused mid-scratch, then let it fall to the notebook. He gave her a faint smile, no words needed. Then the door opened as the high school art teacher entered with a handful of students, their paint-stained fingers and shy smiles, proof of hard work. They unfurled a fresh alternative mural design poster full of local scenes, Amacola Falls tumbling down forested cliffs, old racing silhouettes along Thunder Road, children under a rainbow reaching toward the words, "Be the helper. Truth outlives noise." The youth spoke quietly, but with force, explaining how they wanted to show Silverbrook's true face. Not the caricature painted online, but something rooted the mountains, the moonshine lore, the shift toward a more caring present. Nathan listened, came alive. Later out front, he joined the students to finalize plans, paint cans, brushes, safety cones. He passed jars of water, nodded encouragement. At noon, Evelyn and Grace appeared. Grace's eyes took in the work, then Nathan. Without a word, she reached for his hand. "You showed them how," she said. Nathan swallowed. A group of older residents arrived too. Some retirees who'd moved here recently, part of the influx shaping Silverbrook's new era. Others who had lived through decades of quiet days. They came forward one by one to offer apologies, small donations, or just a nod of reconciliation. In their faces, Nathan saw something older than forgiveness recognition. The afternoon rolled on with painting. Eli, his new friend from the playground, helped apply butter-yellow streaks around the rainbow. A grandmother bird watched umbrella shielding her from sun, her watering can idle at her feet. By 5:00 p.m., the mural stood complete, a new bright layered alive. Not perfect, but honest. Nathan stood back, panting, paint-spattered, satisfied. Clara snapped one last photo. "This is the story," she said. "Yes," Nathan replied. "This is the story." That evening, townsfolk gathered at Glen Wallace Park, a place where families picnicked and bluegrass bands played under pines. They brought homemade pies, lemonade, laughter. Nathan stood beside Grace and Evelyn as the sun dipped low, warming their faces. Mayor Bennett cleared his throat. "Let this be a reminder that in Silverbrook we don't let rumors define us. We let kindness do the talking." The crowd cheered. Nathan thought of the purple stone in his pocket, a quiet symbol of remembering. He pressed it once more, then let it sit there, a heart beating steady in his palm. Because in the bones of the town, its stories, its fields, its people, he'd found something worth staying for. And this time he knew why he was home. The next morning the calm didn't hold. Nathan woke to the hum of his phone vibrating incessantly on the nightstand. The sun hadn't even crested the hills yet. He rolled over groggy and answered without checking the caller ID. "You need to see this." Clara's voice came through urgent now. She sent a link. He clicked it. His heart sank. A video was spreading online. Grainy footage from a security camera taken the night before the original mural was defaced. It showed a man hood up, spray paint can in hand, but the video was deliberately edited. Just enough frames were cropped and cut to make it look like Nathan. The caption read, "The truth about Silverbrook's new savior caught in the act." The post already had thousands of shares, thousands of comments, most from people who had never stepped foot in Silverbrook, but some worryingly were local names. Nathan recognized people he'd shared coffee with, laughed with, worked beside. He felt the floor shift under him. Within an hour, he was at Harper's Cafe. The usual warmth in the room was missing. Dolly herself looked up from behind the counter, her face pale. "I know it's not true," she said quickly, as if reassuring herself. "But folks are asking questions." Nathan nodded slowly. "I'll fix it." He stepped outside just as Evelyn pulled up. Grace hopped out of the passenger side, but Nathan could tell something was wrong. Evelyn didn't smile. Her jaw was tight. You've seen it, he said. I have, she replied. I also know that footage is garbage. Grace took his hand, whispering, Don't worry. I told the kids at school it's a lie. Nathan forced a smile, though his stomach twisted. Thanks, kiddo. But things got worse. By noon, a crowd had formed outside the community center. Not a mob, but not friendly either. Local men in worn jeans and work boots. Women with folded arms, clutching phones, murmurs of disappointment, doubt. They hadn't come to hear him. They came to watch what he would do. Nathan stepped forward. I know what's out there, he began. I've seen the video and I'm telling you it's not me. Someone in the back scoffed. Looks like you walks like you. Another voice, Why would someone frame you? Nathan hesitated. Because I left a world that doesn't forgive. Because the people I used to stand beside don't like it when someone walks away and starts building something real. The crowd murmured again. Doubt hung heavy. Then Evelyn stepped beside him. My daughter and I were with him the night that mural was defaced, she said, voice steady. He brought us food, helped Grace with her science project. He wasn't out painting walls. Clara stepped forward too, and I checked the security footage metadata. It's been tampered with. Whoever posted it wanted you to believe it, because they know Silverbrook listens to its own. A long silence followed. Then an older man, Mr. Jenkins, spoke. I don't know much about tech tricks, but I know that kid. He nodded at Grace. Wouldn't follow a liar, and I trust her judgment more than any video. A few chuckles broke out. The tension loosened. Grace beamed. That evening, Nathan returned home and collapsed onto the porch. The weight of the day pressed into his bones. The attacks weren't stopping. They were escalating. Whoever wanted him gone wasn't playing games anymore. He pulled out the purple stone, turned it in his fingers. You still with me? He asked quietly. The stone, of course, said nothing. But the door creaked open behind him, and Evelyn stepped out, carrying 2 cups of tea. Thought you could use something warm, she said. Thanks. She sat beside him, both of them looking out into the darkening street. You think it's going to stop? He asked. No, she said honestly. But I think you're stronger than whatever's coming. He looked at her. I wasn't before. You are now. They sat together in the quiet. Not everything was fixed, but something had shifted, because truth doesn't need a megaphone. It needs time. And Nathan was done running out of that. Dawn's first light filtered through the pines, drawing long shadows across Silverbrook's gently rolling hills. Nathan woke to a quiet stirring, a collective breath held between the town and him. The prior day's confrontation had shaken something loose in his chest, but it hadn't broken him. He sipped lukewarm coffee in his truck, parked beside the community center before heading inside. Inside, volunteers were already arranging materials for the week's next project, reopening the rundown library wing, which had sat closed for years. At 9:00 a.m., Mayor Bennett arrived, clipboard in hand, looking more determined than Nathan had ever seen him. That video attack, some people think it's a final blow, the mayor said, voice low. Nathan nodded. Maybe. But blame isn't the opposite of trust. The mayor gave him a look. I'm ready to fight for the truth. For this town. Word spread fast in Silverbrook. By mid-morning, locals trickled in. Librarians dusting off shelves. Task force volunteers making fresh signage. Even the cashier from the grocery store. They brought their tools, their questions, and most importantly, their presence. Nathan found Evelyn at the sorting table, stacks of books behind her. She handed him a chipped mug full of pencils. We're trying to build something stronger, she said. One trust brick at a time. He smiled. That's the best kind. Kids from the middle school arrived next part of the One Silverbrook Youth Club, their t-shirts bold across their chests. From the edge of the room, Grace waved and gave him a thumbs up. He met her gaze, nodding back. By lunchtime, the library wing looked different already. Windows, repaired shelves, restocked reading nooks arranged with cozy throws. The mural's colors bled inside, now visible through open doors. Clara appeared again, camera in hand, but eyes softer. "You're making this real," she said. Nathan leaned against a table. "I used to think delivering a quarterly report mattered. Turns out, words in empty rooms don't change hearts." Clara placed her notebook on the table. "You're breathing life into places people forgot existed." Mid-afternoon, a rallying voice echoed through the open doors. It was Mr. Jenkins, who had worked construction before retirement, holding a stack of donation cards. "We got enough to keep the lights on and hire a part-time assistant librarian." A cheer erupted. Others stepped forward. Parents offering tutoring help. Veterans offering security on evenings. Retirees offering weekly story hours with grandchildren. Nathan felt his throat tighten. The weight of everything he'd walked away from melting in this moment of authenticity. Then Mayor Bennett cleared his throat again. "We're going to dedicate this wing tomorrow. It will be called the Helper's Corner in honor of someone who reminded us why this matters." Nathan swallowed hard, heart blazing. He looked out at the faces, hands rough from work eyes warm with renewed hope. That evening, Nathan stood outside under the towering pines by the community center. The breeze carried the scent of cedar, the promise of a coming rain. He pulled the purple stone from his pocket, warmed by his hand. He pressed it softly. Evelyn joined him silently. After a moment, she said, "They believe now." Nathan nodded. "They see now." She met his gaze. "That's all any of us ever want." He thought of the numbers, the town's population, hovering just over 4,000, overwhelmingly white and traditional in its values. He thought of how striking and challenging his presence had been. But now slowly, the fabrics of trust were being rewoven, strengthened by action over assumption. At the edge of the darkening sky, fireflies flickered into life. Tiny sparks, nearly invisible but unmistakable. Nathan pocketed the stone and inhaled deeply. He wasn't rebuilding an empire. He was helping rebuild a community. And this time the change was as quiet and steady as the turning of the seasons. The early afternoon sun filtered through tall pines, casting mottled shadows over the newly revived library wing. Families, teachers, town elders, and volunteers gathered in the courtyard just beyond the entrance. Folding chairs were arranged in neat rows, and a simple wooden podium stood ready, draped with a homemade banner that read, "The Helper's Corner, dedicated today." Nathan stood near the back, hands tucked into his pockets, watching as the crowd settled. Grace sat beside Evelyn on the front row, her legs swinging, excitement lighting her face. Nathan's heart swelled seeing her there, the girl whose small act had sparked it all. Mayor Bennett stepped up to the microphone. His voice carried easily in the hush of anticipation. "Thank you all for coming. Today we dedicate this space to something far bigger than bricks and books. We dedicate it to kindness, to action, to the spirit of helping that lives in every one of us. It is called the Helper's Corner." He turned and looked at Nathan, who offered a small nod of appreciation. The mayor continued. "We had help along the way. Invisible help. Quiet help. But none of it would have mattered if the people of Silverbrook hadn't shown up. And someone reminded us what that looks like." Nathan stepped forward. He cleared his throat, scanning the faces before him. Parents with toddlers, seniors with canes, teens in school uniforms, strangers who had become friends. He looked at Grace, whose nervous smile steadied him. "Thank you," he began softly. "I came here not expecting a monument. I came here because a little girl handed me $10 when my card failed. That did two things. It fed my hunger and fed a part of my soul I didn't realize was starving." Murmurs of recognition echoed through the crowd. "I have lived a life chasing headlines, applause, bottom lines," he said. "But none of that changed me. Staying here fixing playgrounds, reopening libraries, painting murals has changed me. You have. This corner isn't about me. It's about the truth that helping matters." He paused, glancing at the inscription on the building, "Be the helper." Truth always outlives the noise. Grace's stone, all of it woven into the walls. "I want kids to come here," he continued, "not just to read, but to remember that community is built from small acts of care, that no one is too powerful to ask for help, and no act of kindness is so small it can't change a life." Applause broke out, soft at first, then growing in warmth. Nathan stepped back down. Grace ran up and threw her arms around him in a fierce hug. "I helped build," she whispered into his coat. "No," Nathan corrected gently. "You helped me build something real." Evelyn handed him a tissue and a proud smile. As the crowd dispersed, volunteers guided guests inside to explore the fresh shelves, the cozy nooks filled with donated books, the new reading lamps, storyboards posted on cork strips, and a bright corner painted in soft yellow labeled Kids Nook. Clara Reyes found him beside the entrance notebook, empty now, but satisfaction bright in her eyes. "You told it," she said simply. He nodded. "Let's hope people listen." By evening, the courtyard had emptied chairs folded and returned banner carefully stored. Nathan remained seated on the same wooden bench under the pines, now shaded and hushed. Grace sat beside him, yawning. "She's worn out," Evelyn whispered as she came out to join them. "We'll head home soon." "Okay," Nathan said, resting his arm lightly across Grace's shoulders. She leaned into him. The three sat in companionable silence, the quiet only broken by the rustle of pine needles and a distant train's horn. Nathan thought of how 3 weeks ago he had felt invisible. Now he felt connected, rooted. Evelyn looked at him. "You ever regret coming back?" Nathan drew the purple stone out of his pocket and rolled it in his fingertips. "I thought I did once." He looked at her, then at Grace, then at the library glowing softly behind them. But not anymore. Evelyn squeezed his hand. Night settled in. Nathan stood brushing off his jeans. He tucked the stone back into his pocket. "We'll go home," he said gently. Grace hopped up, sleepy, rubbing her eyes. "Good night, Mr. Nathan." "Good night, Grace," he said, catching her. "Sleep well." As they walked away, Nathan glanced once more at the sign, the Helper's Corner. The lights inside cast a gentle glow onto the courtyard. He exhaled, a weight lifted. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Doubt might return. New challenges might arise. The man in the suit might appear again. But here in the current of this place he had found something worth defending. A truth made of hands, hearts, and bookshelves. And in that he had found himself. When the choir of cicadas rose in the warm night air, he realized maybe this was home. An imperfect, healing human home. Morning light filtered gently through the tall pines beyond the Helper's Corner, greeting Silverbrook with a golden hush. Nathan stepped out into the small, cobbled square that served as the heart of downtown historic red brick buildings encircling the old Dawson County Courthouse, a structure standing since 1858. Restored yet dignified in its age, it was a place rooted in legacy, carrying whispers of every soul who'd ever strolled down Thunder Road, from moonshine runners to NASCAR legends. He walked past the Georgia Racing Hall of Fame, its siren silent early in the day, waiting for the next champion to ignite it in celebration. And beyond that, dreamy storefronts, some long shuttered, others newly painted, stood as silent promise. Protecting our history and providing for the future, read the city motto printed once on a pamphlet Nathan recalled spotting. He paused to touch the cool bricks of the old jail built in 1881, its thick walls speaking of confinement and community-told truths. In this place, every structure carried a story of Cherokee heritage, of miners chasing gold in 1829, of wild distills and daring races that evolved into NASCAR. Nathan inhaled deeper. He felt the pulse of generations in this square, and with that came clarity. What he had built at the library wasn't a detour. It was part of the same current that had always run through Silverbrook. Legacy didn't silence change. It had to embrace it. He made his way inside the helper's corner. The bright yellow kids' nook welcomed him with open arms from the entrance. The rows of books stood like patient friends. In the corner, a display honored local history, a photograph of Raymond Parks and Red Vogt, beside vintage images of racing beginnings and a plaque recounting the town's moonshine and NASCAR roots. Clara stood there, camera off, notebook closed, but her expression was that of someone realizing something profound. "You're building more than community," she said quietly. "You're blending past and present. This place feels like home." Nathan nodded. "We're not erasing history. We're building on it." Later, as the town's weekly farmers market opened on the nearby street, Nathan and Evelyn wandered among stands selling fresh biscuits, local honey, homemade preserves and crafts. Entrepreneurship and tradition side by side, like the hands of mothers teaching children to knead dough beside those of retirees offering stories from old times. At the stand of Bert's farm, Nathan chatted with a farmer about the early fall coming. She offered him a free sample of peach jam, and as he spread it on bread, he recognized that this land, this Appalachian inheritance, thrived in quiet acts of renewal and resilience. Meanwhile, Grace chased fireflies near the fountain, collecting fallen petals to press between pieces of wax paper, muttering poetry only a child could compose. Back on the courthouse steps, the mayor arrived with a handful of flyers and maps. Today was the launch of a series of heritage walks to celebrate places like the old jail, the Gilland House on Thunder Road, Amacola Falls, and trails that once echoed with Cherokee voices. "Would you speak at the kickoff event?" he asked Nathan, tone hopeful. Nathan considered the brick facade the silent witnesses of ancestral dreams, of racing legends, of brewing moonshine by night and building community by day. "I'd be honored," he said. They climbed the courthouse steps together, townsfolk scattering out to attend. At the podium, Nathan glanced at the crowd, teachers, mothers, shopkeepers, children, clutching homemade signs that read, "Truth and roots and helping is heritage." He spoke from the heart. History is not a monument. It's living. It's what we do when we honor what came before and dare to make something new. Silverbrook's legacy runs deep, from gold prospectors to moonshine roads to racetracks and community halls. Now we're adding pages to that story, not with speed or fame, but with empathy, renewal, and shared belief. They cheered. Grace jumped up beside Evelyn, eyes bright. The heritage walks began, small groups trailing behind Nathan, Clara, and the mayor, as they pointed out the courthouse cornerstone laid in 1858, the jail's iron bars that once held more than prisoners, the Gilland House's moonshine still as a testament to defiance and reinvention, the Appalachian trails as a connection to native roots and future wanderers. Nathan led, gently sharing stories he'd learned listening, as elders filled in details and children questioned with wonder. Each footprint on the walk was an affirmation. Every person like him could root themselves here authentically and unafraid. At the day's close under gathering dusk, fireworks of gratitude glowed in timid smiles and returned nods. Nathan returned to the bench in front of the helper's corner, Grace's stone warm in his pocket. Evelyn and Grace joined him, and together they watched the courthouse clock tower ring old and faithful, marking time, reminding the town that history is less about what we hold in memory and more about what we build with our hands, hearts, and shared humanity. An early spring breeze brushed through Silverbrook, carrying the scent of pine sap and fresh rain across the courthouse square. Nathan stood in the quiet morning light, gazing at the historic Dawson County Courthouse, its red brick facade standing steady since the mid-19th century, a silent witness to generations of community life. He thought of everything that had happened since the day Grace handed him that crumpled $10 bill. Redemption, defamation, mutual rebuilding, and now a deeper turning, integrating who he had been with where he chose to stand. Now standing on shared heritage and mutual trust, Evelyn and Grace joined him. Nathan slipped the little purple stone into his pocket, like a promise. Evelyn looked toward the Gilland house visible from the square, built in 1929, crafted in the craftsman style, complete with a secret attic still used for moonshine during Prohibition. "This house," she said quietly. "It reminds us that Silverbrook has always been about survival reinvention, people adapting, hiding when they had to, but always building families, communities, futures." Nathan nodded. Moonshiners laid hidden tunnels. Now we're building open spaces like the Helper's Corner spaces for learning and connection instead of secrecy. Grace tugged his hand. "Can I tell the tour group about that secret attic?" He gave a wry smile. "That might be too wild even for this town." Laughter rang softly between them. Later that day, Nathan and Clara stood in front of a tentative group of visitors gathered for a Heritage and Hope walking tour. Their purpose to connect Silverbrook's complicated history, Prohibition runners' stock car beginnings, overlooked communities with the new chapter of kindness now unfolding. With steady calm, Nathan spoke. "This courthouse has watched years pass, wars won and lost, laws written and broken. The Gilland house built as a home once sheltered a secret still. These walls teach us that history isn't always neat or righteous. It's human." Clara added, "And today it becomes more an invitation to learn from the past and build something generous and transparent." The group wandered past the Georgia Racing Hall of Fame, where echoes of throttle and cheer still roamed heritage born from moonshine runners turned NASCAR pioneers. At each stop, Nathan invited commentary. An older woman remembered racing scars. A young teacher spoke of how local pride still coursed through town. Even a guest from out of state nodded, feeling the weight of stories carried in these streets. By afternoon, daylight waned, and they returned to the Helper's Corner. Inside, children clustered around reading nooks, while parents quietly paged through town archives and restored photographs. The fresh mural, "Be the Helper," gazed over everything bright and alive. White-collar and blue-collar families mingled, as did multi-generational visitors. Farmers, teachers, retirees, everyone bound by shared narrative fit into a growing mosaic that now included Nathan's redemption. Mayor Bennett approached Nathan. "This tour, it changed me today. People feel more anchored." Nathan placed a hand on the mayor's shoulder. "Sometimes healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about acknowledging it and choosing to build something that honors both who we were and who we want to become." That evening, under lanterns strung across the courtyard, the town held a small celebration. Biscuits with local jam, lemonade, acoustic guitar from a local singer. It was humble, warm, and perfectly unscripted. Grace danced barefoot on the grass. Evelyn watched him, pride lighting her features. Nathan nursed a biscuit, and quietly held the purple stone, knowing that his gratitude for roots, community, and second chances would guide him forward. He looked at the swirl of faces around him, the faces of those who had judged, those who doubted, and those who chose to stay, to rebuild, to trust again. And in those faces, he found his real home. Silverbrook woke beneath a sky brushed pale by early spring. Dew clung to the blades of grass in front of the helper's corner, turning the courtyard into its own small sea of light. Nathan stood barefoot on the stone threshold, the purple stone in his pocket, a reminder that some things remain steady even when the future feels uncertain. Today was not a dedication or community celebration. Today, the library wing was closed, the playground empty. It was a Sunday, a day for quiet reflection. Or so Nathan had hoped. Instead, Evelyn found him sitting on the front steps, lost in thought. "You look like you're carrying a storm," she said, handing him 2 paper cups of hot coffee. He took one, warming his hands. "The man in the suit, he was here yesterday." "You mean Victor Hale?" Nathan nodded. "He dropped by Rosie's, asked about me. I didn't let him see me, but I know he's still out there offering me a lifeline to a world I'm not sure I want to return to." Evelyn sat beside him. "You've changed." "I have." He looked out toward the pines. "But what if that world hasn't changed? What if they only want me when I'm useful to them? When I'm not, they discard the memory of me." She studied him quietly, then said, "Then let them call. Doesn't mean you answer." He took a slow breath. "That's what Grace said the other day. She's got sense." They sat in silence. Eventually, Grace bounded across the courtyard, curious look in her eyes. "What are you two talking about?" "It's just big person stuff," Nathan said. He smiled gently. "Want to help me sweep the porch?" Grace nodded eagerly, grabbing a whisk broom from a stack. As she swept, a rhythm emerged, soft brush against stone, warm coffee scents, the world pausing around them. Later, Clara appeared with her notebook, only this time unprompted. "I've got the story where you don't have to decide today," she said, voice soft. "It's okay if you never go back." He met her gaze, grateful. "Thank you." Clara nodded, then left. No cameras, no flash, just trust. By afternoon, the town's rhythm had returned. The cafe filled with faithful locals. A neighbor dropped by with fresh eggs. Children chased fireflies in the grass. The mural "Truth always outlives the noise" glowed in accidental afternoon gold. Nathan walked to the mural, fingers tracing the letters. He thought of Victor's card still burning in the sink at Evelyn's. That final act, letting it collapse into ashes, had been freeing. Now the choice felt clearer. That evening, under a sky of purple dusk, Nathan and Evelyn stood under the pines. He held the stone, now worn smooth. "I'm not going back," he said softly. Evelyn looked at him steadily. "I know." He exhaled a tension lifting behind them. Grace called to chase more fireflies. The past, the tech empire, the betrayals, the headlines, was not forgotten. But Eden had been found in simple things: a library, a playground, a stone. And in choosing to stay, as Nathan slipped the stone into Grace's small hand and joined her laughter under dangling pines, he knew Silverbrook had offered him something far greater than fame. It had offered him a place to belong. Sunlight filtered through the high pines at dawn, illuminating the courtyard of the Helper's Corner with a forest green glow. Nathan stepped outside, greeted by the sound of pages turning, a steady hum of life. The library wing was back open, its entrance framed with wildflowers someone had planted overnight. An unexpected gift that carried both gratitude and hope. Evelyn approached carrying a tray of coffee and pastries freshly baked for volunteer readers who'd come to host early morning story time. "They say kids are learning to help as they read," she said softly, placing the tray. "Maybe the helper spirit spreads quietly," Nathan said, taking a croissant. "Like this courtyard unnoticed until something blooms." Grace appeared from between shelves holding a stack of picture books. "Mr. Nathan, may I read to the toddlers today?" she asked, proud and confident. Nathan smiled down at her. There's no better helper than someone teaching through stories. Moments later, he sat in the reading nook, watching Grace's voice brighten the room as children gathered around her ears, alert smiles, wide hearts leaning in. He realized then that legacy isn't built with speeches or empires. It's woven quietly in moments like these. Later, volunteers arrived with tools to extend the little garden beds by the entrance. Nathan joined them, digging deep into the soil, planting marigolds and zinnias. Evelyn handed him a watering can, and together they tended to life growing right beneath their fingertips. Clara Reyes wandered over camera off notebook in her hand. She didn't ask questions today. She simply offered a knowing nod. No words, just recognition. Some stories needed living, not telling. By afternoon, the town's weekly farmers' market had reopened in full swing near the courthouse square. Nathan walked among tents displaying fresh produce, handmade quilts, vintage photographs of Silverbrooks racing past, and jars of peach preserves scented with sunshine. People greeted him, some with old questions, some simply with smiles of appreciation. No headline drama today, just rooted connection. At the center of the market, a small table displayed handmade signs reading helper classes, offering things like woodworking lessons, art journals, and even kindness circles for teens. Initiatives born from community discussion and funded through contributions. Nathan paused beside the table, feeling the weight of how small ideas become movements. Just then, Eli, the boy from the playground, ran up, holding a sketch of the restored mural. He'd added new symbols, an open book, a rising sun, and a purple stone tucked into the corner. "You drew this?" Nathan asked, kneeling beside him. "Yeah, it's our story, right?" Eli said quietly. Nathan pressed his hand to the boy's shoulder. "The best story, and you helped write it." That evening, under the gentle glow of stringed lanterns at the library courtyard, town members gathered for a helper harvest, a modest shared dinner of casserole, cornbread, peach cobbler, and sweet tea. Conversation flowed easily, layered with laughter and gratitude. Mayor Bennett raised his glass of iced tea. "Here's to Silverbrook and to those who hungered for something better than oblivion or empire. We found it right here in books, gardens, playgrounds, and trust." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Nathan looked around at Evelyn, at Grace, at neighbors by his side. When applause ended, Grace climbed onto a chair and declared, "Can we help again tomorrow?" Nathan laughed, moved by her boundless energy. "Absolutely." Later still, as the night deepened and guests drifted home, Nathan lingered by the mural's light. He pressed the purple stone in his pocket, feeling its smoothness, shared warmth, held promise. He thought of the suit-wearing man far away. The choice not to answer the door had opened him to something infinitesimal yet immense. A quiet legacy built so gently, it almost didn't announce itself, yet forged with more meaning than any empire. He looked up at the pines, silent sentinels of change and constancy. Here at last was a story worth telling, not because it clamored for attention, but because it whispered and people listened. The legacy of a helper isn't measured in wealth or fame. It's found in roots set down, hands held out, and the quiet turning of hearts. Silverbrook had embraced him, not as a provider, but as a partner, a neighbor, a friend. and the silence between those titles was in its way the loudest truth. Spring had settled into Silverbrook with quiet certainty. The air smelled of flowering dogwood and dew-softened pine needles. The Helper's Corner bathed in gentle morning light, its open doors welcoming guests once more. School was winding down, and the world outside still seemed as though it had learned something enduring about kindness. Nathan stepped out onto the porch, cup of sweet tea in hand, watching the subtle hum of everyday life. The crops of marigolds and zinnias around the entrance nodded in the breeze, small symbols of a flourishing community. Not long after, Evelyn emerged with Grace. The girl carried a paper plate of peach turnover left over from Saturday's father-daughter pancake breakfast at the downtown pavilion, where laughter had danced over syrupy pancakes and chatter about the upcoming Mountain Moonshine Festival. The town's calendar was filling again: Main Street concert nights, food truck Fridays, the Amicola Regional Farmers Market every Saturday. Nathan offered the plate to Evelyn, who smiled and accepted. "Morning," she said softly. "Looks like today's planning committee is meeting at the hall." He glanced at Grace. "And what about you? May I help?" she asked, bright-eyed. He chuckled. "Already starting." They walked together toward the historic town hall, where volunteers were gathered to plan a new seasonal tradition, a helper trail. Connecting the library, the community center, and local parks, highlighting both natural beauty, like the trailheads of Stiles Park, and community landmarks like the Georgia Racing Hall of Fame and the courthouse. Inside, Clara snapped photos quietly, notebook tucked away. Her presence now as integrated into the town's rhythms as the church bells or the Saturday market stall. Mayor Bennett addressed the group. "We've restored places," he said. "Now we build connections to each other and to the history and beauty of this county. Amicola Falls trails Main Street. People should hike, bike, learn, not just pass through." Nathan stood and spoke. "Not every mark we leave is visible, but every marked trail reminds us that direction means something. We want this to show Silverbrook is rooted. Here's where we come together step by step." Later, the group walked outside toward the courthouse square. Disc golf baskets dotted the park, a small skate area, and courts for pickleball, where teenagers practiced shots amid friendly shouts. Nathan noticed how people passed each other, greeting, nodding, sometimes stopping to share ambitions, worries, small triumphs. During the Amicola Regional Farmers Market, Nathan helped Grace set up a lemonade stand. They sold lemonades under the shade of pines, and neighbors dropped by, some offering tips, some just kind words. Beneath the cheerful clink of cups, Nathan felt something ripen, trust grounded in shared minutes. That evening, Nathan and Evelyn strolled through the town square lit by lanterns. They passed the Georgia Racing Hall of Fame, its simulators humming softly, as tourists tried their hand at virtual races. The courthouse shone silent witness to decades of small-town life, and now to something renewed. He reached down and pulled the purple stone from his pocket, warm with touch. Evelyn smiled gently. "Seasons change." Nathan nodded. "They teach us that growth is quiet, and sometimes it waits until it can't be stopped." At home, they tucked Grace in. She drifted to sleep, hugging her embroidered helper pillow. Nathan closed the door behind her and stepped onto the porch to breathe deep. The night settled around the library wing windows, dark but bright, in memory of daytime laughter. A soft wind whispered through the pines. He pressed his hand to the stone. No hurry to be someone else again. Here, between community events, shared laughter, and trails both physical and personal, he had learned the truest kind of legacy. Forged not in gilded halls, but in quiet seasons of service. And that legacy would grow one gentle trail at a time. The first light of summer dawned softly over Silverbrook, gilding the pines and casting long shadows across the courtyard of the Helper's Corner. A few early risers, caretakers, gardeners, librarians, sat on the porch in quiet companionship. Nathan joined them, coffee in hand, welcomed by familiar nods and the gentle creak of rocking chairs that felt like permission to belong. Today was no ordinary day. It was the 10th anniversary of a moment no one in town would forget: a crumpled $10 bill, a girl's outstretched hand, and the beginning of something unexpectedly lasting. Grace stirred awake nearby in the apartment above the library wing, the old building humming with potential and memory. Nathan glanced down at the purple stone in his palm, warmed by his grip. It felt both simple and sacred. By mid-morning, families, neighbors, and longtime residents had gathered outside the library. A modest banner read, "10 years of helping," a celebration of community legacy and truth. The boardwalk outside was lined with handmade signs: "Be the helper." Truth outlives noise. Kindness grows here, woven into the town's visual soul. Evelyn stood beside Nathan, radiant and grounded. Grace arrived clutching a drawing she'd made of that first moment, their hands connected by that $10 bill, now historic. It was framed and set on an easel near the porch. Mayor Bennett stepped up, ushering the crowd to hush. 10 years ago today, he said, voice steady, Nathan Cole came into our town anonymously, and a girl taught him something more valuable than money. Today we celebrate what has grown from that moment. Not just a story, but a home. People listened, smiles shining, some misting behind glasses. Nathan stood, his heart thrummed with memory and gratitude. "I came here hoping to disappear," he began. "But this town saw me. A young girl showed me a path back to myself." He looked at Grace. She stood tall, eyes bright. He folded in his heart the echoes of that day. In the years since, the library wing has become a center of learning and inclusion. Tutoring programs, heritage archives, evening story sessions with local elders, and summer book clubs run by teens who grew up here. The playground stands vibrant with murals telling stories of the land, the people, the journeys that shaped them. The Helper Trail now loops through woods past historic sites and community art pieces painted by school children, uniting past and present in motion. I used to measure worth by numbers and headlines. Here I've learned that value lives in roots, not reach. I may have walked in under a headline, but I stayed for roots, friendships, purpose. The applause rose, tender, filled with recognition. During the informal reception after the speech, Nathan circulated among neighbors, some he knew from the start, others he'd met along the way. He talked quietly with Miss Stover about rose pruning, shared a laugh at the vintage photograph exhibit with the retired teachers, and hugged the high school art teacher who'd started the kids' mural club. Clara Reyes arrived again, carrying her camera, not for a story now, but to capture memory. She nodded at him quietly. The final photo she would ever take of his journey looked more like belonging than breaking. At sunset, people drifted away under a twilight sky lit with fireflies. Nathan lingered, strolling the courtyard as stars began to emerge. The stone in his pocket pulsed with meaning, no longer just a reminder, but a testament. Under the soft glow of lantern light, Grace appeared. She climbed onto the porch, pulling her mother by the hand. "We changed the drawing," she whispered. In her hands, the framed picture now included the mural in the background, the library, even the silhouette of a man kneeling beside a girl, a visual time travel across 10 years. Nathan knelt beside her, brushing a finger over her hair. "You changed me," he whispered back. Evelyn joined quietly, and the three of them sat together, holding that frame and watching the lantern swing above. Nathan thought about the invitation he was once offered to go back into a world of recognition and influence, how he declined, without a second thought. He thought about what had truly mattered, not reclaiming a lost place in headlines, but building a steady place in hearts. The crickets sang, the pines whispered, the library glowed behind them, alive with memory and promise. In the end, he realized home is not just a place. It's a story woven quietly between moments of trust, acts of kindness, and the courage to stay when you know you belong. And Silverbrook had given him that story in abundance. He pressed Grace's hand gently, looking at the horizon where dawn would rise again. After 10 years, hope wasn't new. It was homegrown. The story teaches us that true legacy isn't built through fame or wealth, but through kindness, connection, and quiet acts of service. It reminds us that even the smallest gestures, like a child offering help, can ripple into profound change. When we choose community over ego and truth over image, we create something lasting. In a world that often values noise, this story champions the quiet strength of belonging, humility, and doing good without needing recognition.